If your creative push has helped you, you can help the show by becoming a patron on Patreon. For $20, $10, $5, or $1 a month, you can not only show your support of the podcast, but also do so much to help to cover all the costs. Head to yourcreativepush.com/Patreon to find out all of the goodies that you can get when you become a patron at each of the levels, and thank you in advance for helping this show. Your Creative Push, episode 183.
You can set a resolution January 1st and say, okay, I'm going to make myself sit down and, write 500 words every day. And that might last a week or two, and then it's going to be like every other day, and then it's going to be once a week, and then it's going to be abandoned. Because relying on pure willpower is totally unreliable.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I am your host, Youngman Brown, and today's episode is a solo episode about New Year's resolutions. And I am pumped up because this is the time of year where you reflect. You look back on the previous year, things that you've accomplished, the things that you have not accomplished, and I don't know, I think that we all, as creative people, get this sense of excitement and motivation for the upcoming year to change things up, to plan ahead. And I think that New Year's resolutions do get a bad rap. We all set them, though, or at least we all think about them and think about what we would want to change about our lives, about our upcoming year, and what we would like our life to look like in 1 year's time. But we all seem to fail, or at least most of us do. I do. So today's episode is about thinking a little bit differently about New Year's resolutions, thinking a little bit differently about how to make those changes that you want to make. And I promise that by the end of the episode, I will have you thinking a little bit differently about how to approach this upcoming year. I will do my very best to make you accomplish whatever goal you want to set. And I want you to start thinking about what kind of goals you do want to set creatively. So to help you do that, we're going to start with a clip from my man Satasora from episode 169 as he talks a little bit about bad habits.
It's a rich life when you choose to do that rather than veg out. Because for years, when I was in nurse's residence, after a breakdown of a relationship, and I was living in central London right next to a tube station. So you go, oh, these people who you don't know, thousands of them, or your neighbours, all the kids coming across from Europe, and, it's just jam full of tourists. And I just used to sit in this ground floor room, looking out these big windows, watching loads of YouTube and DVDs and just cracking another one, and I'd start I'd go and get 4 cans of beer, and then I got to the stage where I was like, 4 might not do tonight. Why don't, and it was just like, how on earth did I get here? And just put the brakes on, man. And when you choose not to do that, when you choose to make a clear decision, and you begin to see the richness of what is available to you as the alternative, and it might not make you money, but it's going to really improve the quality of your life. It's going to be the thing that allows you to, I've heard the terminology of the source, the divine, the Godhead. You can, creativity, chi, it's that which is outside of ourselves that we do not understand. It's the great mystery. And when you put aside bad habits, and there are other things, I ate so much food because I used to confession, I used to order pizza online, and this guy used to deliver it, and he was the only human being I might see that evening. I'd just be on my computer, and then ding dong, this guy turns up with a pizza. It's just, oh my God, why don't I just take my soul out and kill it there and then on the spot, man? But getting back to the positive, when you do realize it and you start to engage it, and it's like, oh my God, it's like being resuscitated, it's just like, I'm alive. Oh, this feels really good. Oh, this is feeling really scary. And just keep going with it. 'Cause it is going to be scary. It's always going to be scary. If it wasn't scary, you wouldn't be taking it, if you weren't taking it seriously, rather.
Exactly.
It wouldn't be scary. So, scary's good.
Scary is good. And what I love about this clip is that moment of clarity, that realization of our bad habits, that our life isn't where it should be or where it could be. And it's really hard to look at ourselves from the outside, though. And that's because we only exist in our own heads. We are the ones that have gotten ourselves to that place. It's not only hard to see ourselves in a negative light, to see our kind of untapped potential, but it's also hard to see ourselves in that unbiased light. It's hard to get past those blinders that we've subconsciously put on, to see past those excuses that we've internally made for ourselves. It's really difficult to give ourselves that unbiased evaluation and to take our ego out of the situation. And it's scary. But like Sadasaurus said, scary is good. So in poker, we call anything that we do that doesn't win us money long term a leak in our game. And this could be like a really small thing, like calling from the small blind too often and losing $1 more than we have to on a consistent basis. Or they could be huge, giant leaks, like calling somebody's all in with a flush on a paired board where you're pretty sure that they've got a full house, but you just have to see what they have. So you call and you lose hundreds of dollars every time that happens. And if you've never played poker before, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Don't worry about it. Just understand that we all have leaks. We all have bad habits that are hurting us in the long term. But if you've been a listener to this podcast, you know that the whole point of this podcast is to admit to ourselves the bad habits that we have, the leaks in our game, creatively speaking. And sometimes we don't even realize it because bad habits are usually fun or they require no hard work. They help us to forget about the things that we should be doing, the things that require painful, hard work and discipline. So we conveniently just don't notice that they're actually putting us through more long-term pain. That pain that we receive in 5, 10, 20, 50 years down the road when we look back and we see our life and we think of it as wasted. All that time we spent ignoring the things that we're supposed to be doing. Even in 1 year's time, we say it, especially as we get older, how time flies. And bringing in the new year is that time when it's inevitable to look back over the past year and see what a shithead you were. And this isn't just with your creative habit. This can be with anything. Eating, relationships, fitness. And I bet you even made that thing your resolution the year before. And how long did that last? It happens to me every single time. And historically, I fail hard. The one exception being this podcast, though, which will be celebrating its 1-year birthday later in January. But it's hard, it's hard to keep up with your creative passion. It's hard to keep up with your New Year's resolution. But this is the year that you're going to do it, and I'm going to help you. And if you listen to last episode, you know that I asked you to think about your creative New Year's resolution and to bring it to this episode. So if you haven't come up with one, I want you to pause the podcast right now. I want you to think about what you would like to have accomplished this time next year. And make it something good, something tangible, not an intangible thing like draw more or play music every day or make writing a habit. Those are good goals, and that's fine if that's your resolution. But those are going to be byproducts of what you're going to accomplish. What I mean is that big project that's been on your mind, the big Goliath of a thing that you've been scared to even start, or a body of work, a series, something that you know you'd be able to complete in 1 year if only you had kind of the bravery and the motivation to start and to continue working on. Okay? So pause it, come up with your idea and write it down even. This thing that next year on New Year's Eve, while you're waiting for the last few seconds of the year to tick away, you'll look back and be just so stoked that you're able to finish this thing and to get it out of your head. Okay? Go ahead. I'll wait. Now, many of my guests have embarked in year-long, 365-day challenges. So let's hear from a couple of them. First, my man Piccolo from episode 110.
2013 was a pretty low year for me. I used to draw like one drawing every month or so, or even 2 months. So when the year ended, I didn't like the amount of work I did on that year. Like I was nearly stopping to draw.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided that on the next year, on 2014, on one of my New Year's resolutions was going to be draw all the days of the year, like year-long project, like a self-imposed project to start creating again. I think it's about the mindset. I was like, on 2014, I was always waiting for some sort of inspiration to come. Like, for me, it was okay to draw only when I felt inspired. And that's not okay. Like, you can wait for a month to get inspiration, you know? So you have to make it a part of, make it part of your life. That's why I started drawing every day. I think that was the main purpose of the project. The first month is the toughest, I think, because you are like developing this habit. You have to make a big commitment on this first month, and then it just feels natural to you. Like it used to be, I felt strange if I didn't draw anything on a day. It felt like it was a lost day in the week.
And I think you can probably relate to that idea of low output, only creating, one drawing a month, only getting to your creative passion whenever you kind of feel like it. And like Piccolo said, that is the wrong way to approach it. So let's hear from David Talley from episode 63.
I think the biggest thing that holds creative people back, this is just like my experience from talking to numerous students and other creatives, is kind of this just lack of a structure. And lack of a deadline. I think as creative people, again, we are always like, oh man, like, yeah, creativity. Yeah, photography is so cool. I'm a photographer, but we never actually do anything. We never actually shoot anything. And I think initially what held me back, not when I was in high school, because, after that experience in Hawaii, I think I sort of wanted to just like go skateboarding with my friends or whatever. But when I started to get more serious about taking photos, there was definitely a time where I felt like I was being held back by my ability to just consistently produce images, like just to take photos. And it was this time when I didn't have a structure to create from. And I had kind of no motivation, because of that, I had no motivation to create anything. It was just like, I like to take photos. And I talked to a lot of different artists, just being in the photography industry. And a lot of them say, I just feel like I don't have any reason to create, so why would I create? Or I don't have any deadline, like I'll just create whenever I want. I think that's just kind of like a fatal flaw, and that's something that held me back a lot when I was just jumping into photography. But there was a day where I was, okay, so do you remember StumbleUpon.com? Did you ever?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was late one night, my senior year of high school, 17 years old, jumping through StumbleUpon, just totally feigning the existence of any hard work that I was supposed to be doing for some class. I don't know what class it was, but I was just bouncing around on the internet, and the tags that I had put in to search for were conceptual art and photography. And I came across this kid who was also 17. His name was Alex. He was living in Georgia doing this creative 365-day photography project. And I was like, these photos are insane. Like, these are just incredible. I want to do this, because up until this point, I was kind of just shooting photos of my friends longboarding. I grew up in Southern California, so there's lots of hills and just lots of like opportunities to get hit by cars on a skateboard. So I was shooting photos of my friends and videos, but I just didn't feel like it was quite. I didn't feel like it was quite enough to say what I wanted to say. And this kid was doing exactly what I wanted to do. So I looked at it, and he was about halfway through the project, and I was like, I need to start this project tonight. So the goal was take a photo every single day for a year. That was the first part of it. And the second part of it was try and get better every single day. And within that, I kind of found my calling as a photographer. And I think that was what initially motivated me to actually pursue the art form, because without that, I wouldn't even be on, this podcast talking to you. I wouldn't have done anything that I do, because it gave me kind of that architecture, that framework to work from. And I think, again, as creatives, we love the idea of things and we hate the idea of hard work. And I think we need to kind of like combine the two into one so that we can actually get stuff done. So now, whenever I want to create work, unless it's just like a spontaneous photo shoot and I'm just, thinking I've got to get out and create like today, round up my friends and go shoot. When I'm not doing something like that, I'm always working on some sort of time-based project is what I call it. And it's just really a way to motivate myself to create something. So I usually put myself on, something like a 52 weeks project where I will shoot a photo every single week for a specific theme. Right now, Kiara and I just started something called the Alphabet Project, where every 2 weeks we're shooting the next consecutive letter of the alphabet. Right now we're on the letter C. So we're trying to, recapture that desire to create on a consistent basis and like have that motivation to create. And I think, it's not hard to create like cool photos. Like if you have the skills and you know how to create like a nice looking photograph, it's not hard to go out and do it. But if you don't have a purpose, I feel like, a purpose in creating that image or an overall project that you're working on with a deadline to the end of it, you can lose sight of, that motivation that you want to have to create. So I think that's kind of the way that I've defeated that resistance, is by putting myself kind of on a self-imposed deadline, initially with the 365, which made me want to quit photography altogether at one point, but was also the best thing that ever happened to me. And I try to recapture that, on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis, where I'm putting myself on these deadlines that really don't matter in the long, the overall sense, but they do matter because they're the things that force me to create. One of the coolest things I think too with doing that is that, you've heard the thing where it's like 10,000 hours to become an expert or whatever in any one thing. And I think when you do a daily project like this, when I did the 365, I calculated about how many hours I was spending per day on that project. And then I thought about, over the course of a year, what does that translate to? And it looked like about 4,000 hours that I'd put into the project, just focusing solely on creative photography. So I was about halfway to becoming, an expert or whatever in creative photography, which was really cool. So I think when you're right, you do grow every single day. It's impossible not to.
We've all heard that 10,000 hours thing, and David is right. By putting in the time every single day, you'll be well on your way to becoming a, quote, expert in whatever it is that you're doing. And with these guys, you can see how making a year-long commitment is a really effective thing to do if you struggle with output, because it forces you to become this kind of creative creature and continually make work. It becomes this habit, this daily practice, and you stop thinking about all that extra bullshit that comes with creating things. You're just able to shed all of those things that have held you back, like thinking too much about what's next, perfectionism with the thing that you're currently working on, and the doubt of the things that you've completed already and are afraid to put out into the world. You get into that flow, not only while you're creating, but a kind of like life flow where you can just ignore all of the other things and you can just create and share and create and share and then create and share. And all the time you're putting in and chipping away at those 10,000 hours, you're not even thinking about it. You're just living a creative life at that point. But I also think that these guys are exceptions. They completed what they set out to do. And when you set out to do something for an entire year, often it's just too long of a time. And that's what we're going to get into now. I don't want you to take this negatively, but that goal that you came up with, that I asked you to pause and think about, I'm going to give you some reasons why I think you're going to fail. I know. Bear with me. I know I tricked you. I built you up with all this talk about bad habits and striking them down with your resolution. And I made you come up with something that you want to accomplish in 1 year's time. And immediately afterwards, I'm telling you that you can't do it. What kind of motivational bullshit is this? I know. I hear you loud and clear. But don't get disheartened, because I'm going to tell you how I think you can succeed with your goal. So stick with me, because I am going to explain why I think year-long resolutions are kind of flawed and kind of a silly idea for normal people. for people like me and you, not like superheroes like David Talley and Piccolo and all of these other amazing people that I've interviewed that have been able to kind of catapult their artistic and creative careers. And it's because of this thing that I like to call the "but this year is different" syndrome. And the "but this year is different" syndrome is like this. A new year beginning forces us to kind of reflect on the previous one, like I talked about before. If the earth didn't revolve around the sun and we didn't have years, then we wouldn't have this damn problem. But many of us only reflect on how lazy or how scared or how stagnant we've been the previous year just this one time. And one of the goals of this podcast is to offer daily bursts of this willpower, to really talk in depth about these kind of icky issues that hold creative people back, the internal battles that we all face, but never really get to talk about or hear about, which makes us all feel like we're going through it alone. But for everyone else, for people who don't listen to the podcast, this yearly reflection is the only time we do it. And all that shame and all that anger supercharges us with willpower to change our ways. We tell ourselves this year is different, and we are so amped up with that willpower that we believe it. And that willpower is great, but as Jessica Abel explains, it's not enough.
You can set a resolution January 1st and say, okay, I'm going to make myself sit down and, write 500 words every day. And that might last a week or two, and then it's going to be like every other day, and then it's going to be once a week, and then it's going to be abandoned. Because relying on pure willpower is totally unreliable. It's like willpower is such a limited resource. And unless you can figure out other ways to build it into your life that feel less demanding of that willpower, it's not going to work. Like, you're not going to get there.
She's so right, though. You don't want to feel this way at the end of next year, so you vow to change it in the upcoming year. You remake your resolution, or perhaps you tweak it a little bit. Maybe you even make it a tad bit easier than last year's resolution so that you'll have a better shot of actually doing it. And here we go, New Year's Eve. Happy New Year! January 1st, you're hungover and you're tired, so you'll start on January 2nd. But then January 2nd, you're off to the races and you feel great. January 3rd to 7th, you keep up with it, but the 14th, you started to cheat a little bit. You started to slow down the pace. Maybe you even make it to February. Maybe even all the way through March. 90 days and you've put yourself through a lot. It almost feels like a year's worth already, and you're only a quarter of the way through the year. Oh man. You realize just how long a year is when you're sitting there at the end of March and you're looking at December 31st as your end point. And what's beyond that? Are you going to have to deal with this pain and this discomfort that you've put yourself through the following year too? Are you really going to change the end date of this stupid resolution from December 31st to the end of your life, whatever that may be? And that's really why I have a problem with New Year's resolutions, because of that end goal. Don't get me wrong. I think it's wonderful to give yourself a timeline to accomplish your goals. But what most people are attempting to do is create a positive, permanent change in their lives. And when you start thinking about a year's time, it's kind of like trying to comprehend the vast distances of outer space, which I do all the time, y'all. Your brain just can't quite comprehend it. A year is a long time. And to keep up with this space theme, I just started watching Mars on National Geographic. And Scott Kelly, who is a twin that went up into outer space for a year into the International Space Station, was talking about, having been up there for a year, how he realized just how long a year was, much longer than he thought it was. And he said he felt like he lived his whole life up there. And I think that when you're in the middle of a year-long resolution that really requires you to change who you are or who you've been pretty much your entire life, putting yourself in that uncomfortable position every single day, you realize how long a year is, and it can be so demoralizing. You have this place that you want to be, but you can't quite feel yourself being there because the destination is just too far away. And that, I think, is why we do so poorly with New Year's resolutions, and why I don't think that they are very effective. The endpoint has to be either closer or it has to be non-existent. You're either going to change like your month or you're going to change your life. And I think that either route you take will be effective, but let us start with the important one, changing your life, because that's what we're trying to do with the New Year's resolution, right? Having it be a 1-year goal sets the end date too far away, but it also gives you an out if you do make it the full year. You know, are you just going to stop? No. What's the point then? What's the point of doing it? Why do it for an entire year and just stop? So like I said, it's about changing your life. But how do we do it if we failed so many times before? If we can't keep up with a simple New Year's resolution for more than a month or two? So we're going to look at it from two different angles, but let's start slow with Brendan O'Connell from episode 132.
If you think of anybody who goes through cycles of not eating well, like they eat junk food and they're just like, and they eat junk food to the point where it's a craving. And the last thing you want to do when you're in one of those cycles is eat an apple. You know what I mean? Like you can't even taste something like an apple. And so the same thing sort of happens with a creative activity is you really have to ease in. I mean, some people successfully do it, but just jump right in, you know, throw the TV out the window, empty the cupboards and just get to work. But almost setting the bar low so that you make it a working habit is like, today I'm going to do this for an hour. I use timers a lot. Like I set a timer for 25, 30 minutes a day, and a bare minimum, I try to do, you know, six Pomodoros of painting a day. On good days, I get, you know, 6 hours in. But, you know, I try to do that every day because I just feel better.
And I think this is a good thing for some people. Maybe you have tried to change your ways in the past for New Year's resolutions years before, but went at it too fast and you burnt yourself out. So start slow, you know, ease into it. Set a timer and have that time period be it. And maybe even cut yourself off if you want to do more that particular day so that you can build up excitement for the next day, so that you have more time to kind of think about it and almost get your mouth watering to get back into it. That might make it easier for you to not dread the next day, to really have this daily thread that goes through your entire year of one day to the next to continue picking up where you left off. But the important thing is to get to it every day and to make it part of your daily ritual so that it does become a habit. And Mitch Bowler is going to talk a little bit more about that.
So I think, like, recently I'm going through trying to understand fitness. And so I'll just make a correlation here between art or creative things and fitness. So with fitness, there's all this information out there, like just so much. And it was really confusing for me. And it was good because it put me back in the shoes of a beginner artist or beginning creative, or maybe you're a creative, but you haven't done something before. So what I'm trying to do now is just take 30 days and figure out what you need to do and make your plan for 30 days. And with your plan, it should be daily habits. So there's so much power that comes from daily habits. Like if you sketch every day for 15 minutes, that can turn into something much longer. So you just set that as your habit that, okay, I want to be better at drawing. So I don't have much time, but I do have 15 minutes a day. That's what I'm going to do for 30 days and see where you're at the end of those 30 days. And don't try and keep being smarter while you're at that. Like 30 days goes by really quickly. So if you just sit down and do something for 30 days, you know, if you want to start a blog, if you write 1,000 words every day, or you want to write a book, there's all kinds of things that you could do, but it's just these daily habits, and those turn into all kinds of things that you can't even tell where it's going to take you in the beginning. You just have to do it and have faith and keep it simple.
Now, some people like to say that it takes 30 days to form a new habit, that after 30 days, your brain accepts this new behavior and makes it much easier for you to continue it or to discontinue a bad one. And others say 21 days, which is kind of one of those things that's quoted over and over and over again, so that it's kind of accepted as fact. And it came from a book in the 60s from a plastic surgeon, Maxwell Maltz, called Psycho-Cybernetics. But I have seen this to be true in myself. About a month's worth of doing things really is effective, both in kicking bad habits as well as starting new good habits. And of course, with this, there's no guarantee that you won't go back to your old habits after some period of time. And that's where making it a part of your life comes into play. But it's a start. And like Mitch said at the end, that's the wonderful thing about starting that creative habit, that creative journey. You can't know exactly where you're going to be until you actually start. So setting a 365-day goal for yourself, in my opinion, can seem somewhat senseless. It doesn't allow you to pivot in the ways that you want to if you have something too specific in mind as your beginning goal. Or you might even set too small of a goal for yourself. You might have sold yourself and your future abilities short. So what if this is kind of like a mini version of something that you've already tried for your New Year's resolution and failed? What if you did make it through January? You made it for 30 days. You made it through that important month like Piccolo talked about. But come March, you're right back to where you were at the end of the previous year. If that's the case for you in the past, don't worry, because you are not alone. But maybe we need to be more aggressive about this 30-day thing. Maybe we need to turn those 30 days into more than just a change of a habit, but into a real challenge. And many other guests on the show have done these 30-day challenges. Jake Parker was even on, the guy that started Inktober. And I know that many of you have participated in a 30-day challenge, maybe in September. Amy Hoover was one of those. I'll let her explain how hard it is when you really give yourself a difficult challenge for 30 days, but also how incredibly rewarding it is.
So yeah, I did 30 paintings in 30 days. I'm, and you talked about that before too, the September 30-30. And last year was the first year I did it. I had no idea what I was getting myself into and did not prepare, did not know what I was going to paint, waking up each day. It was, I don't think I'd ever worked harder in my entire life, but it had I got such great feedback. I didn't even think really any of them would sell. The first challenge I did, I thought, if I sell 2 out of the 30 paintings, I will have paid for supplies and stuff like that. And then 27 of them ended up selling.
Oh, wow.
And I thought about it and I'm like, well, this is more just like it's a personal challenge. It's an artistic challenge. And I think it forced me into the studio for 30 days straight, which I'd never done before. And I think you start tapping into different wells after maybe 2 weeks straight. Mm-hmm. You find a different gear, and I'm really thankful to I forget how I found out about this thing that artists did, but I think it definitely kind of showed me another level that I can work at. Yeah, and so I did it again this year, and it's kind of like going in knowing kind of how rough it was last year, just the sheer physicality of creating that much work in a month. But I was a little better prepared. It's a challenge. I mean, I'm redundant now, but it was just a big challenge. But all sorts of new people found my work and kind of resonated with it. And I highly, highly suggest anybody out there who kind of wants to test their mettle, just give yourself a challenge like that and you'll find out.
For sure. And I think it's like you said, tapping into the reserves, you can find some different things than you normally would have. And you're right. I think anybody should try it, even though it is exhausting. It's like, when, in baseball, whenever you put the heavy weights on the bat before you step up to the plate, so that whenever you are swinging the bat, it's a little bit easier and it doesn't seem like it's much easier to get into the studio. How long would you estimate that it would have taken you to do that same amount of work, were it not for that kind of self-imposed challenge?
I think last year, the first year I did it, I think at the time I was probably maybe doing, and these are larger paintings, like a painting a month. So we're talking,
2 years worth of work, a year and a half, something like that, within a month.
That's crazy. It's like it's like a cheat code almost. It's like being able to push yourself past that. Like you're able to, I don't want to say get stuff, not bad stuff out of you, but it's just like getting stuff out of you, like so you can like jump ahead in time, like 2 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because this and writing and, even doing podcasts, it's all about, I mean, you talk about, don't listen to my first podcast.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all about practice, and it's getting in those hours, and it's putting in the time. And I think one of the, I didn't know this going into the challenge. I didn't think about, oh, well, if I do 30 paintings in a month, maybe I'll pick up 2 years worth of skills.
Right.
Not that I did that, but it didn't even occur to me. All the good stuff that came out of working my ass off that first year, last year and this year, I mean, it's far outweighs any of my tired eyes and the amount of caffeine I drank. But yeah, I think also working at that pace, and, maybe for some artists, that's kind of how they work anyhow. I don't know any, but there's probably some out there. But I think it also, I think if you're trying to create stuff, a lot of us have an issue with being in our heads too much and second guessing a lot. And when you have a crowd of people waiting for that painting in the morning, you don't have time. Like, you just have to go up to the easel and start the damn painting. You don't have time to say, I don't know if they're going to like this. Do I like this? If this composition is okay. You have to just go for it, which is kind of not in my nature. I'm very much in my head. So it quieted me down a little bit, especially all that resistance stuff. There is no resistance when you've committed to this thing. And, I didn't want to go on social media and say, all right, I quit.
Right.
So yeah, I think part of the way that whole thing works is actually committing to it in public before you're remotely ready to do it. And that's what I did. I had no idea. I said, this is what I'm going to do. And then people were waiting for it. So I kind of had to. I'm glad I did that, because I don't think if I said to myself, I'm going to do this, I would have quit on day 4.
Right.
In a way, it's kind of like acting as if, like, I'm going to pretend that I can get this work done and just tell everybody that's my plan.
Okay, so I think that Amy really nailed so many of the positive things that can come from putting yourself through a 30-day difficult challenge. You start tapping into different wells and find these new gears. You become a different creative person. Like Amy said, you don't even have time to think about those resistances, those kind of creative blocks that have held you back in years past. You simply have to get to work. And 30 days is also an amount of time in which you're able to see the end, not like a year. You can actually see the end of the month, and crossing off a day on the calendar actually has an effect. And that can be hugely motivational to keep you going instead of giving up. Okay, ready? Here is what I am proposing for you. Go ahead and take a look at what you wrote down, that big, massive project that you set for yourself, or the body of work that you want to create before next year. That big, massive 1-year goal, I want you to finish it by February. I want you to do a 31-day challenge and to get it done. And don't laugh. You can do it. It will be a massive undertaking. It will be annoying. And it might mean that you do nothing else for the entire month of January. You might have to give up a lot of sleep. You might have to get the people around you to support you in your quest. You might have to drink a lot of coffee or drink a lot of Red Bulls, but you can do it. And if you listen to the show, you know that I love the idea of Parkinson's law. If you have a certain amount of time to get something done, you'll take the full time to do it. You can extend that deadline or you can shrink that deadline, and either way you will get it done so long as the deadline exists. Well, earlier in the episode, you gave yourself a year to do this thing, and I want you to do it in a fraction of that time. And I promise you, you can do it. It will just hurt. But think about all the resolutions you never kept up with. Can you imagine finally getting one done? And by February, completing your resolution in a month as opposed to never completing it at all, can you imagine what you'd be able to accomplish in the next 11 months? And how strong of a creative you'll be in February. You'll be tired, of course, and I give you permission to take a break. But can you imagine how much easier it will be for you to do all the work? Now that you've been through this seemingly impossible amount of work, you've done it. So now you won't have any excuses anymore. And like Jessica Abel said earlier, willpower isn't enough. But I think that if you can find the willpower to get through January at this hyper level, you will find those gears, you will find those reserve wells that you never knew that you had. You'll build all of these creative muscles and become not just a completely new creative person, but a new person in general. You're a person who has done their work right when everybody else is quitting theirs after they've barely scratched the surface. I mentioned earlier about changing your month or changing your life. And I think if you can complete this super, hyper, ultra short-term goal, you'll obviously have changed your month, but I think you will have changed your life as well. Yes, willpower isn't enough to change your life permanently, but the willpower to put yourself through hell for a month will birth you out the other side as a changed person. And you'll be stuck with your new habit, like you're tattooed or branded with this like badge of courage, and you won't be able to get rid of it. Going back to that show Mars, it's like trying to escape the gravitational pull of Earth. That's what's so expensive about going to outer space. It's the rockets, it's the rocket fuel. So use the willpower that you get at the beginning of the year and strap it on like those big booster rockets on spaceships and blast off with it to escape the gravitational pull of all of your resistances, all of the things that really do hold you back, and just go as hard and as fast as you can. It's going to be a rough ride, but you will soon be kind of floating safely above it all. And with your new knowledge, your new skill set, your new work ethic, you'll be able to create new resolutions for yourself for the end of the year, ones that you never would have been able to even fathom last year, which would be just a month ago. And I bet you'll accomplish them too. So if you've tried something like this in the past but failed, maybe try to tell people about it too. Tell your friends and family, because you're probably going to need their support and understanding anyway, and post it on social media. Be very specific about your goals and tell them what you're going for. Link back to this episode if you want, yourcreativepush.com/resolution. I'll explain it for you, maybe even try to motivate them. And if you're listening and it's already January, or if it's the middle of the summer, or if it's 2020, it doesn't matter. You can do this at any time. Give yourself a massive creative boost and jump ahead a year or two in your creative journey. And if you heard my whole spiel and you sighed to yourself and thought that what I'm asking is simply too much, I really beg you to reconsider. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to make you shudder. It's supposed to be a challenge, and that's why you should do it. So that's it. I really hope that I was able to motivate you to get to your New Year's resolution. Whether you started out with a bang or started out slowly, I absolutely wish you the best of luck, and I wish you the best wishes for a wonderful 2017 in all aspects of your life. Thank you for a wonderful 2016, and I will be here to continue to try to motivate you and to push you to pursue your creative passions, to get past all of those resistances that you do encounter in the year to come. So that's it. Happy New Year, and we will see you in 2017 if you need the push again. I love you all, and we'll see you then. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.